Gregory, how are you today?
Well, I'm doing okay.
That's great. So I see that your name on the paperwork is Gregory.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a name that you would rather go by, or is that what you prefer to go by?
Most of my friends call me Greg.
Okay, cool. So I'm Alyssa. It's very nice to meet you.
Nice
Thank
to
you for
meet
coming
you.
in today. So before we really dive into things and before we get started, Greg, I know you filled out some paperwork in the lobby that went over confidentiality, and I do have those forms here in front of me. But I do just want to go over them again. I want to make sure that you understand that everything that we talk about here does stay here in this session. Here at the Hope Center, we do take it very seriously to keep clients' information confidential. I may share it with my supervisor. They are within the organization that you signed for, and at times my colleagues, just to get some help with maybe diagnosing or maybe a different perspective on a problem that you're facing, but we will never share your information outside of this organization without your explicit permission. So what that would look like, if you gave me permission to share it maybe to your doctor or with somebody else, you would need to fill out a release of information. And it would go to whoever you specify on that form for a specific amount of time.
Okay.
You understand that?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you have any questions about that?
No, I think I'm pretty clear on that.
Okay, so another thing about confidentiality is if I identify that maybe you want to harm someone else, or you want to harm yourself, or you have somebody else is being harmed in the community, I do have to disclose that. I do have to call that in or report that to someone. My way of practicing is I typically try to work with my client about that. So like in the past practicing, I've had to call in reports, but I normally notify my client like, hey, this is very scary what you're talking about. I think it would be the best thing for your safety if we made a phone call together and we came up with a plan. So that's normally how I do things. So I try to work
call together.
Yep. So if I identify something dangerous, then I would probably tell you about that in our session, and we would make that call together.
Okay.
Okay? That's how I try to do things. It can't always be done practically in a dangerous situation, but hopefully it wouldn't get to that point.
Okay.
Okay, cool. So my next question, have you ever participated in therapy before?
I've done so recently divorced, and we had marriage counseling, and I mean it seemed to go okay, and the counselor and therapist seemed to be fine, but I've been through therapy before with marriage counseling.
Okay, that's good. That's good. I always love clients when they've experienced therapy before. So with that being said, some of my clients who have done therapy before, they do have certain expectations for their session. Do you have any expectations from me today, or is there anything specifically that you were wanting to get out of this session today?
No, I mean, I really, it was more of my friends kind of telling me I needed to get to therapy is really what it was, so that's really why I'm here.
Okay, well good. Thank you for being here today. It's a big step for anybody to come and talk to someone about what's going on. So let's jump right into what is going on. What brings you here today?
Well, so I recently divorced. I mean, about a year ago. We went through the therapy. It was a tough divorce, but through after the divorce, everything seemed to be good. My friends really have been kind of distant. I feel like I tried to get involved, but they say that I sit off in the back. I'm in the corner. I'm not hanging out with them like I used to. Before I was married, and then even through the divorce, we were going and hanging out. But now it's my friends, my family. They're all kind of really concerned with where I'm at. And honestly, I had been feeling kind of down through the past year.
Okay.
So that's really probably the big reason why I'm here.
Okay. So when you say feeling down, what does that look like to you in your everyday life?
Just not active, just like, not having any motivation, feeling like, I get home from work and I'm just kind of slump on the couch and not wanting to go out and, just not even wanting to be active, just feeling really down on myself.
Okay. I'm sorry to hear that. So it's definitely something that we can talk about and work through here. And I have an assessment that I've identified just from talking with you about this that we're going to do later on, just to kind of see where you're at, because it does sound like you might be dealing with some slight depression, so I would like to ask some more questions about that. So you've been divorced, you said, for 2 years or a year?
For a year.
Okay. So can you tell me a little bit about that relationship?
Well, so I mean, during our marriage, you know, my ex-wife now, she's very active in the community. She's very, like, her family's like tied and connected with all of the local people around, and you know, she's really really always been a really good person, and it just wasn't working out. You know, and her family's kind of they got money.
Okay.
You know, so, but other than that, I mean, that was like the big, like, I don't know why it didn't work. It just didn't work.
Okay. So we are a domestic violence center. So I do have to ask, you know, because you were referred here and we are in a session at this center, was that something that occurred during your guys' relationship?
I mean, as a guy, like, I always feel like domestic violence is like a hard thing to talk about, but I guess I would classify it as domestic violence. Like, I'd come home late after working a long shift, and she'd get pissed off and start yelling and screaming, and that's probably one of the things. And it really felt like, I mean, I was working my butt off trying to do whatever I needed to do, but I mean, I wasn't making the money that the family was making, and I think it just really, I don't know, she got pissed off about stuff like that, and you know, I've been trying, I really tried. I don't think I did enough, you know, and you know, I don't think I ever lived up to what the expectations were, and even now I feel like my expectations aren't even being met. You know, just and there were some instances where running up the door, she slammed my arm into the door. I don't know if it was necessarily on purpose, but you know, I mean, at the time it didn't seem like it, but now I look back on it, and I think it might have been. You know, I mean, I had broke my forearm. It took me out of work for a couple weeks. You know, and you know, just it was even then, it just didn't feel like she was like sorry for it. So like now I look back on it, I don't know if I think it was on purpose.
Yeah, I'm sorry that you went through that. That sounds like a lot. So sorry. Yeah, that sounds like a lot to go through. So, was there any other instances of that physical abuse?
I mean, there's other times where, you know, like we'd be walking down the street and I'd look at another woman, and it really wasn't looking. It was just kind of glancing over because I was just looking at people, and she'd slap me in the back of the head, and you know, just small things. And I never really thought nothing of it. It just really wasn't, you know, probably I shouldn't be looking like that, you know. But yeah, I mean, there's instances like that happen a lot.
And so from what I'm hearing is I've heard a couple of statements that you've made. So correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like there is a little bit of like self-victim blaming going on. Like you said, I probably shouldn't have been looking like that. You know, I probably shouldn't have been doing this. It made the insinuation that maybe you shouldn't have been working as late as you were. Tell me more about those feelings.
Well, I mean, I feel like, you know, I feel like it's my fault, right? Like, I could have been doing more. I could have done more to develop our relationship more and just been more, you know, there. Even though, I mean, yeah, I'm working, but, you know, like, it felt like it was my fault. I feel like it was my fault.
Yeah, I'm sorry. And that does happen a lot in intimate partner violence relationships or domestic violence relationships. Where there is kind of that inner self-blame that's happening. So I have identified a few things. I do just want to go through them with you. So here at the Hope Center, and the way that I do therapy, I'll start off with that. The way that I really like to practice therapy is I'm very strengths-based. I really do try to promote your strengths and empower you to go back out into the world and bring those strengths with you. Sometimes it is very hard when you're in a situation like that to identify your own strengths. So it is something that we will work on here, and it is a big part of the practice and what I do. I'm also very environment-based too, so I really do focus on a person's environment and those environmental factors, how they're influencing the way that you're feeling currently and the things you're going through currently. So there might be some instances where I identify, if you tell me, and this is just an example, you know, I don't know anything about your income and your financial status, but maybe I identify that you're having housing situations. I can make a referral for that. Maybe I identify that, you know, we go through this assessment and maybe I identify you are depressed. We can go for an evaluation for that. Try and fix some of those things that, you know, may not per se be here in this session, but environmental factors that will impact how we practice here in this session. And here at the Hope Center, we are very object relations theory focused. So it is something that ties directly into domestic violence victims typically. So I'll explain that a little bit to you because I know that that's very confusing. So object relations theory is it really focuses on the inner object and the external object. So internal object and external object. So you would be the internal object. It's everything that you're feeling and how these external objects, which would be, you know, your ex-wife, your friends, maybe your boss, the people in the external environment, how they're influencing your internal self-views.
Okay.
Right? So I heard you say something. And maybe not in these words, so correct me if I'm wrong or if I'm misunderstanding, but I heard you say, this abuse happened to me and I feel like it's my fault. Does that sound correct?
Yeah, no, it's correct. That's what I feel.
Yeah, so the object relations theory really does tie into how these external objects are influencing how you feel about yourself, Greg.
Okay.
How Greg views himself and how Greg is viewing his outside world. How those external objects focus on that. So it really focuses on how our past relationships may impact our future relationships. So even things like your mom or your dad, and we're going to go into that in a little while, how those have influenced maybe your way of being, I'm so sorry, you have a fly on your head. How those have influenced, you know, how maybe you were in that relationship or how you're reacting to your relationships around you. The goal of object relations theory focuses on helping patients improve these relationships. And really the idea is that we're going to try and reframe that self-view, and we're going to do some work to kind of focus on those relationships and fixing those relationships in your environment and how you view them, because that's really important. I heard you mention that you've been distant with your friends, you've been kind of in the back corner, and I'm just going to make the assumption that that's not something that you normally do. Is that correct?
Oh, that's correct, yeah.
Okay, can you tell me how those relationships look prior to the divorce, or?
Yeah, I mean, we used to go out. I mean, we'd go out downtown. We'd go hang out. We'd go to the club. You know, we'd go party. You know, and we used to have a lot of fun. You know, and most of my boys, they were all from high school friends. You know, that we had, and we've all been real close knit together, and kind of just go chill out and go bonfire partying all the time. And now it's like, we don't do that as much.
Yeah, that does sound like fun. Sounds like you guys had a really good time. So what we're going to work on here is trying to get back to that place for you. How can we fix this view of these relationships, and how can we get you back to that place?
I don't know. It's just finding a way to, I guess, not get rid of the thoughts that are in my head about, the negative thoughts and the feeling of, just not having any drive.
So we'll work on that here. And there's some different ways I'm going to go through with you that we can try and do that. But before we hop into that, I do have 2 assessments that I want to do with you. The first one is a biopsychosocial assessment. It's required by the agency. I'm not going to go through the entire thing with you because you have filled out a few of these questions prior to coming into the session with me today. So I'm not going to sit here for your entire session and go over the biopsychosocial questions, but I do have some for you that I think would pertain to our questions today. The second one is going to be it's called a PHQ-9, which I know is a very confusing term, but it is, if you've ever gone for a physical or if you've ever gone to a doctor's office, they do give it to you prior to your physical. So it's basically a depression scale. So I did hear you say some things about, maybe being depressed, you don't have motivation, you're not able to do the things that you used to do. So that just triggers in my mind that maybe there is some underlying depression going on, and we may need some outside assistance for that. Okay? So let's go ahead and get started on on the biopsychosocial. So and this is just for me to get an idea of what's currently going on in your environment. Like I said, I do like to focus on that a lot. So I am just gonna ask questions pretty specific to that. And I am gonna take notes. This is just so that I can remember. I do see a lot of clients. I do like to write things down. This gets typed up in a note later on. This information, again, is covered under our HIPAA policies. I don't share this with anybody. So if you ever wanna see my notes, please feel free. I have no problem showing them. I don't write down anything goofy on here, so you can see it at any time, okay? So tell me a little bit about your current family situation. I know that you said that you were divorced. So your living situation, your family situation, what does that look like?
Yeah, so living situation, so a small apartment. When we got divorced, it was how they always do it, right? They take all the money and they divide it all up, and it kind of sucks because her family's got a lot of money. But either way, we got a small apartment. I got 2 kids that we share time between each other. We were able to go work out a custody agreement with the kids. Love the kids. I mean, I take them all out. I do try to get them out to do some hiking and some fishing and stuff like that.
Sounds fun.
Try to keep them busy. It's just when I have the time with them. But
so what I'm hearing is you're a really active family. You guys
I try to be active, with the kids, absolutely. And, it's tough. It's been tough with just the separation of time and trying to keep the work balance and everything. I mean, I'll work a 12-hour shift every day, and half the time it's weekends, so it's like I got to share time with him. But then when I have them, it's like I don't always have the time with them because I'm always working. So
it sounds like you're doing the best you can.
I'm trying to, but again, I don't feel like I'm doing enough for them. So
it does sound like you're doing as much as you can at the time with your kids. I'm sure your kids don't have those same viewpoints that you have about not doing enough time. It sounds like you're a great dad from what you've described to me. Let's talk about your developmental history. Is there anything? Have you ever been diagnosed with any developmental disorders such as ADHD, anything like that?
Not that I know of,
Okay.
not that I'm aware of.
What about your highest level of education?
High school diploma.
Okay. Perfect. And I know this is kind of a very couple of touchy questions that are coming up next, but I do like to ask them. And just remember, this is a safe place. I'm not sharing this information with anybody else. Can you tell me if you've ever been diagnosed with any prior mental health conditions, or are you currently seeing anybody that's prescribing you medication for a mental health condition?
No, I'm not.
What about physical health conditions?
I mean, I'm physically in shape. I mean, my doctors always tell me that I'm in good shape. My heart rate's good. My blood pressure's been good. I haven't had any big issues. I mean, I'm active. I'm
Perfect.
an iron worker, so I mean, I work up pretty high and do a lot of high stuff. And I got to be healthy to go do that. I guess.
Okay. Well, that's great. That's really good to hear. What about any history of physical or sexual abuse in your past?
Not my past. No,
Okay.
definitely not. Nothing that I know of.
Nothing as a child, nothing like
Nothing
that.
as a child. No.
Okay.
No.
What about your mom and dad? Are they still married? Are they divorced?
They're still married. It's a weird relationship. And Dad, he kind of hangs out, and they really don't see a lot of each other, but they're just kind of around. They low income family. I mean, we grew up with nothing. So, but Mom always does her own thing. Dad always did his own thing.
Okay. Can you tell me a little bit about like your mom's relationship style? They're still married, so I'm assuming they weren't like dating other people or anything like that. How did they discipline you? How do they get along with people in their environment?
I mean, they'd whoop me every time I do something bad. But, and I mean, there's always some weird things going on with them. Like, they had some, she always had a lot of people coming in and out too, which I always had my inklings, my thoughts about it. I always knew there was something always going on. It really wasn't probably a healthy relationship, but we were low income, so I just kind of tried to do my own thing and stay to myself.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that there was some suspicions that maybe your mom was cheating on your dad when you were younger.
Oh, absolutely.
Do you still have those suspicions today?
Oh, I'm sure it is.
Okay. Yeah, so I don't think that I have anything else to go over on the biopsychosocial. You've really answered everything else that I needed. Is there anything that you can think of that might be pertinent to this that you want me to know? Anything else?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, great. So let me get back. So the next one that I want to go over is called a PHQ-9. So it's that depression scale that we talked about. We did identify a few depressive symptoms. So I did just want to go through this with you, and I'm going to tell you how to do it. So PHQ-9 stands for Patient Health Questionnaire, and it is number 9. So this is the 9th one that they've come out with. So I'm going to just read you the directions, and then I'm going to tell you what the numbers mean, and we'll go through. It's going to be questions 1 through 10. So then at the end, I'm going to add up what that is, and I'll give you a scale. We might not go over that today. I do typically need some time to review it. So maybe at the next session,
Okay.
we can go over the results of this, and we can see if we need to make any external referrals. But I would just like to get this done with you today. So over the last 2 weeks, how often have you been bothered by any of the following problems? So keywords over the last 2 weeks, so not over the last month, not over the last 2 years. It's going to be during the last 2 week period. So not at all is going to be 0. 3 is going to be nearly every day I've experienced this. So it typically is like 5 to 7 days out of the week is a nearly every day you've experienced this symptom. So number 1 is little interest or pleasure in doing things.
The higher the number is, the more
Yep,
often.
so not at all is 0,
Mhm.
and then nearly every day is 3. So over the last 2 weeks, how often have you experienced little interest or pleasure in doing things? 0, not at all. 1 is several days. 2 is more than half the days. 3 is nearly every
I'd
day.
say 2.
Okay. And then number 2 is feeling down, depressed, or hopeless. 0 is not at all. 1 is several days. 2 more than half the days. 3 is nearly every day.
2.
Okay. Number 3, trouble falling asleep or staying asleep or sleeping too much. 0 is not at all. 1 is several days. 2 is more than half the days. 3 is nearly every day.
Oh, that's 3, yeah, for sure.
Okay. Number 4 is feeling tired or having little energy. 0 is not at all. 1 is several days. 2 is more than half the days. 3 is nearly every day.
Let's hope 1.
Okay. Number 5 is poor appetite or overeating. 0 is not at all. 1 is several days. 2 is more than half the days. 3 is nearly every day.
It's a 2.
Number 6, feeling bad about yourself or that you are a failure or have let yourself or your family down. 0 is not at all. 1 is several days. 2 is more than half the days. 3 is nearly every day.
It's a 3.
Okay. Number 7 is trouble concentrating on things such as reading the newspaper or watching television. So 0 is not at all. 1 is several days. 2 is more than half the days. And 3 is nearly every day.
That's a 1.
Okay. Number 8 is moving or speaking so slowly that other people could have noticed. So like your movements are slowed, your expressions are slowed, your speech is slowed. Or the opposite, being so fidgety or restless that you have been moving around a lot more than usual. So constantly anxious.
Probably 2.
Okay. Number 9, thoughts that you would be better off dead or of hurting yourself.
And a 1.
Okay. All right. And then number 10, if you have checked off any problems, how difficult have these problems made it for you to do your work, take care of things at home, or get along with other people? Not difficult at all, somewhat difficult, very difficult, or extremely difficult.
Extremely difficult.
Okay. All right. So I'm just going to save this, and I'm going to come prepared to our next session with your score, and we're going to go over this a little bit more. Okay?
Sure.
All right, so now we jump into the good part. So how do we treat this? What interventions can we put in place to help you move past this? So I do just want to say this type of therapy can take a long time. Here at the Hope Center, we do normally work with our clients for a year, and that's typically what we ask them to stick it out with us for. This is going to be a very trust-based relationship. So you're going to have to put a lot of trust in me throughout these sessions to help you through this, and we're going to be spending a lot of time together. So the first one is psychodynamic therapy. That's one way that we can help with this problem. It is a little bit longer type of therapy. It's a form of talk therapy, just like what we're doing here. It's basically for us to walk through your history, and we're going to identify, just like we talked before, about those objects in your life, the internal objects and the external objects. We're going to identify through psychodynamic therapy how those are all functioning together, and we're going to talk about that out loud. And sometimes, and that's why I say it's a trust-based relationship, sometimes you might not always agree with my assessment, or you might not agree with that relationship. Please don't be afraid to correct me at any time. That is a big part of object relations theory, is having that trust and being able to correct me if you feel like I'm not interpreting something correctly, because I do want to interpret it correctly so that we can work through it. And then once we identify those relationships and those feelings in those relationships and how they're impacting your inner self, we're going to try and reframe those thoughts. We'll try and reframe them to help you have a better outlook on those relationships, and so that you can view the world in a different way. It does take a long time. It is a lot of talking. So I have to trust you to be honest and open with me throughout that process. And then there is another one that is a little bit quicker than psychodynamic therapy. It's called brief treatment therapy. It's basically the same, only we're going to be identifying one set of emotions, one feeling, work on one relationship that you identify as the important one that you want to work through, and we're going to really hone and focus in on that. If I'm being very honest, I do work on both of these modalities kind of at the same time. We do kind of start with an initial emotion or an initial relationship, an initial feeling about oneself, and then sometimes that can develop into a more psychodynamic theory. Okay?
Okay.
Did you have any questions about that?
No, I don't think so. Not this time.
Well, that's good. So we are coming to the end of our session today. So did you have any questions about everything that I talked about, or anything you want to ask me?
No, you said it would take a long time and spend a lot of time together.
Yes, yep. So I do recommend that my clients come weekly for at least 6 months. And it is, I know that that's a big time commitment, but I do recommend weekly sessions, just especially since we're doing talk therapy, to kind of sort through some of these things. So that's typically the recommendation, but you can definitely schedule with the front office, and we can work something out if that doesn't fit into your schedule.
Okay, no, that's fine. You're really nice. I really appreciate that.
Aw, thank you. That's very nice. Well, it was very nice meeting you, Mr. Wilson.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.